Raymore City Council meeting. We have a call roll to confirm a quorum.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Burke, absent. Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Hubach. Present. Councilmember Kellogg, absent. Councilmember Moorhead.
Present.
Councilmember Stevens.
Present.
Mayor Kirkhoff.
Present, we do have a quorum. Everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have no presentations or awards or personal appearances, so we'll move right on to staff reports, please.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Kraft to make a report for the Public Works Department.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thought we'd report on something this evening we haven't reported on in quite a while. Is our snow removal operations. We started snow shifts yesterday around 10 o'clock, starting to pre-treat the roads, and then overnight monitored road conditions. We started plowing about 2 o'clock this afternoon, and as of about now, most of the thoroughfare routes should have been plowed and treated. This is the first event we've had quite a while, so as our residents are learning to drive on the roads, our plow drivers are getting their feet underneath them as well, so make sure you give them plenty of room, give the plows plenty of room. They do not stop on a dime when they have a full load of salt. And so just give them plenty of space. May take a little longer than normal for us to clear the streets. We have 2 new operators on each shift that are learning their way around their routes, and that things look a lot different in the dark than they do during the day. So we are also chasing the temperatures. As temperatures fall, our de-icers aren't as effective. So there may be some snowpack left on the streets in the morning. This is going to melt over the next couple of days, and as always with the temperatures, there will be some slick spots in the morning, so just be careful as you head out on your morning commute. That concludes my report.
Questions of staff? Do we have the tracker up and running on the snow plows?
Pardon?
The ability to track snow plows?
We are working through some things. Our current things that we have available aren't really up to where we'd like them to be, and we are looking at some other options. We're able to use them internally, but really not to the point where we'd like to put them out to share them at this time.
Okay, thank you.
To further expand on that, our goal is, as Mike indicated, we do use them we use it extensively internally to see where folks are at any given time. The problem is we have to get it up to the point where it's going to be real time for the public. So they're getting real information. It's not going to do any good if it's only updating every 10 minutes because a shorter street, so it doesn't look like they're there. Your street looks plowed, and then you go back on and the plow's gone, and you can kind of understand it. If it only takes 10 minutes to do that, you're not gonna get good information on what's being done out there. So we want it to be as real time as possible and show some movement. That starts to get a little bit expensive. We're working with another group for that particular application at this point. Thank you, Mike. At this point, I would call on Ms. Hout.
Good evening. I will provide a quick update about what the Arts Commission has been up to over the past month. The first item is they will be coordinating some art exhibit displays for this room. We had the ability to put up some hooks in between these sound panels, and so we will have the first exhibit being put up at the end of January, and our hope is to use the student art that was submitted as part of the Art Commission's contest that they held at the Tri-County Art League in the fall, and so look for that coming up soon. The goal is to have 4 exhibits throughout the year, and you will see more information on a call for artists, etc., coming out in the spring. The second item that the Arts Commission is working on right now is doing a citywide public art activity this spring. The initial concept includes decorating and displaying Adirondack chairs throughout the community. They are still working through the details of this, what exactly that will look like and what sort of fundraising they'll have to do, but they plan to work through that at their February meeting, and then we'll have more information to the council after they have those details hashed out. And then finally, the Arts Commission will be receiving the final report from Jill Grotzinger, their facilitator, on January 5th. They will be working through a work plan for what that report has shown to them to create some sort of kind of strategic plan to bring to the council at the February 15th joint meeting that they will be having with you all. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about that. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howe. Next week's work session on January 4th includes 2 items at this time: a joint meeting, the annual joint meeting with the Chamber of Commerce at the beginning of the year, and any follow-up that you all might have to the packets that I sent to you yesterday afternoon regarding the RFQ process and the interview process for city attorney and city prosecutor. Oh, thank you very much. And at this point, I would call on Mr. Mike Eakey to give a communications report.
Good evening. Just wanted to give a brief update on the redevelopment of the website, which we initially started back at the beginning of November. Vision Internet has since been taking a look at a lot of the data and a lot of the information coming out of our website, also studying and looking at how users actually interact with the website. What Ms. Hawk is handing to you in the first sheet, which looks like kind of a large weather pattern hovering over our website, it's actually a heat map. The engineers at Vision are able to take a look at where people actually hover their mouse over certain sections of our website. And from that, they're able to kind of put together a good report on where people are actually clicking, what parts of the website they actually use, and what information they're drawing from our website. The second one, which is a little bit smaller, kind of a heat map, that indicates where people are actually clicking when they visit our website. In the past year, we've had about 41,000 people visit our website, and from that, it's generated the kind of the heat map and the clicks that we're seeing on these 2 reports. This is only about a month's worth of data, and in the next couple months, they'll be looking at even more data to help us as we put together a report and put together a website that's truly going to be kind of a data-driven initiative, something that we can take a look at and say, this is what our users and our residents truly want in a website. And with that, I'm take any questions.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, it's good to have you up here. You know, I've been with the team all that long, and I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you. I've admired your work. We have certainly taken a different direction with our communications efforts since you've come on board. I apologize for putting you on the spot, but if I were to ask you right now, and I am asking you, what will be our changes? What, in your vision, what will be our changes at the end of 2016 from where we're at right now? What would you communicate to us and to the public as far as what will be different with our communications pattern, the website, or any other project you'd like to talk about?
Well, initially with the website, what I'm looking to do is make it a more visually appealing website, something to where, you know, the website and kind of the theory that I've brought in, or kind of the philosophy is, it truly is kind of our storefront. It's something that 24 hours a day our residents can go to either conduct business, discover more information about the website, truly to, you know, something that we can build that's going to delight and entertain our residents as they visit our website. Overall, my vision and philosophy for communications at the city is to make us, one, much more informational and also much more personable. I think residents tend to get a vision of city government as this monolith, kind of having a background in higher education. The term they always used is the ivory tower. When it comes to city government, I want residents especially to understand and to know that there's a group of really talented and professional people that work here at City Hall that are, you know, carrying out the duties, making sure you receive your utilities and that trash is picked up every week. And I think that's an important story to tell.
Nothing like slamming that curveball over the fence, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Fearborn, A+. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
That concludes staff reports, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve our consent agenda to include items A for the city council minutes for December 14th, 2015, B, the appointment of Patrick Clark to the TIF Commission, C, appointment of Tom McVeigh to the TIF Commission, D, the final acceptance of the 2014 roadside trail rehabilitation project, E, the final acceptance of the 2014 sidewalk project, and F, the final acceptance of the public improvements for Westbrook 11th at Creekmore.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Consent agenda is unanimously approved. On to unfinished business. May we have the second reading of Bill 3126 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3126 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Section 445.030 K2A of the Unified Development Code of the Raymore City Code.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3126 for the 23rd Amendment to the Unified Development Code.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3126. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion is unanimously approved. We have the second reading of Bill 3123 by title only.
The second reading of Bill 3123 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, calling for and establishing the date of the general city election to be held on April 5th, 2016.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3123 calling for the April 5th, 2016 regular municipal election.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3123. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the second reading of Bill 3128 by title only.
The second reading of Bill 3128 by title only, an ordinance calling for an election in the City of Raymore, Missouri.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3128 calling for the April 5th, 2016 no tax rate increase bond election.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second reading of 3128. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I have some concerns about this. Bifurcation means that you have two parts and you need to have them separated. That's the way I see it on this. We do not need to have the annex as a part of the bond election, because what the other two are, one is on roads and the other one is on parks, and the annex is neither parks nor roads. And so it should be either as a separate entity or it should be deleted completely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Hubach, I appreciate your comments, and I can certainly understand where you're coming from with that, but I would remind you that our intent, at least at this point, is to house possibly some of the Parks Department personnel within that building. It will certainly serve as other purposes beyond Parks functions. There's no doubt about that. Several of the other departments in the city will be holding functions there, as may the City Council at some point. But I think that's where it best fits under the two questions provided. It certainly does not fit under streets. I think you would agree with that. And there will be some Parks and Recs events that take place there. So that's the one where it most fits. As you know, we've already funded the majority of the building of the annex, but the additional funds for the enhancement part of that project would come from, it's question 2, I believe, if I remember right.
But that's the part of section 2 that I'm opposed to. I am saying that it is basically for the city for personnel and for the city staff to have places to have meetings. And that's our primary reason for doing it. And I do not think that it is considered a park and recreation function. It is considered a function of the staff and carrying out their duties.
Mr. Moorhead.
Mr. Fearborn, just just so I understand the construction of the point that Ms. Councilmember Hubach is bringing up, if any aspect of the annex is removed from this language, but yet this is passed, and I'm referring to subsection A regarding our park system amount, and maybe our bond counsel can assist with this. Do we run into any legal problems or ability to utilize funds out of that for the annex if we remove it from the language that the voters approve?
You could remove it legally. You will, because it is such a significant public project associated with Parks and Recreation, because that is where we are going to be housing the administration of Parks and Recreation, and they will actually be the ones scheduling the building for the most part. I think the council would run into the possibility of a charge being leveled that you did not include one of the more significant items that's associated with that particular portion of the bond issue.
Sonia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like it's important to have this in there because, as has been mentioned before, we're planning to house Parks and Rec there in some of the office space, as with all of the other meeting spaces, including the meeting space that was taken away years ago downstairs, where now we have police dispatch. That was pretty much coordinated by Parks and Rec. If someone wants to rent that space for a meeting or yoga classes that are put on by Parks and Rec, those are all things that happened in that room. And as we've been planning for years and years, the plan has been something to replace that community meeting space. And that's primarily what I see this building as, you know, in its initial form, is meeting spaces to replace what was taken away by the dispatch center downstairs. This will be way bigger and way better than what we had downstairs, including the outdoor space, which I know we don't have definite plans, but there was some mention of having kind of an outdoor learning classroom. And I know Parks right now has a program where they do a lot of outdoor learning and invite people in. And so it seemed like this would be a great place for that because we have the outdoor space. So I think it's very fitting to have it in as part of Parks and Rec, even though we've called it lots of different names, including City Annex, even though the city may use it for meetings for city staff or, you know, whatever else. But just like happens right now with the Parks House. I mean, other city staff use that for meetings and things, but it is considered Parks and Rec.
I think that's where I disagree. I don't consider it as Parks and Rec. I consider it as part of the staff's function to be able to hold meetings. And that was why we originally had that space down there, was for staff. Then we expanded it for the people in the community to use it for exercising or what they want to. But the basic reason for this annex and for this, what we're wanting to do, is to make it easier for the staff to conduct meetings. If the people want to use it, fine. We really don't care whether the people use it because we want it for our police department. We want it for all of our staff to be able to get together with meetings. And I think that's more important. If it wasn't a no tax increase, I would say that we still would have to have it done because it's needed by the staff. We've talked about emergency going in there. They talked about a park and recreation. It is more than just park and recreation. It is for the entire community, but only after the staff has been certified first.
And I see it opposite from you, Ms. Hubach, actually. Not that you're right or I'm right, but as far as vision goes, I see this building as being used more by the public than by our city staff. City staff has this meeting room. City staff has, you know, several other smaller conference rooms. They might use it for larger meetings periodically, but in my vision planning this building, I saw it more as use for the public than use for the city. It will be very convenient to have here for the city, and we might have it outfitted so in case of an emergency we could use it. But I think if we it'll be interesting to see once it opens, if we really look at how much time is being used by each group, which one ends up being more.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, what I'm thinking of is this. If the city had to have a meeting of some kind, either a staff or the police or one of the other groups, if they had to have a meeting and the public wanted to have a wedding reception, who takes precedence? I say the city takes precedence because this is a city function and we're here as a council to conduct business for the city. We're not here to provide entertainment for the general public. If we've got some space available, that's fine, but our first obligation is to our staff.
Ms. Kubach, I think you're making some valid points, but this is more than just a building, a physical building. We have a whole outside area that's going to be part of this project. And when we looked at the initial designs by the architect, that certainly is Parks and Rec when you look at the outside and how that's going to fall in. But I think when you ask if one over the other, obviously city functions are important, but if you have a wedding scheduled or something like that, depending on how far it's out, somebody has to take that over and manage it. And I think what we're kind of talking about is the Parks and Rec is going to manage that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm unfortunately, and this is no response or implied implying anything toward the current discussion, but I do want to shift to another aspect of this that needs discussed tonight, because not only are we talking about putting on an April 5th election, we have to name the language, which is another important issue that we had talked about in the first reading. And before we get too down the rabbit's hole on another issue, I wanted to kind of initiate some discussion on this, only because in the interim between the first read and tonight, I became aware from our county clerk that not only do we have our two bond election issues, the school district has one. We could potentially be seeing the library board. The clerk indicated that there could be as many as 6 questions or propositions that'll be on the ballot on April 5th. So naming this and making sure that it is separated out and given the respect it's due, I wanted to kind of at least float to the council for discussion purposes. One of the problems that my parents, who kind of serve as a little sounding board for me, is when I showed them a lot of this language, they said, so do we get to pick either to spend $3 million, $6 million, or 20+ million? And I said, no, these are all 3. You can't pick the one you want. It's all 3 because they're different entities. And which leads me to the following question. Would it be inappropriate for us to title we had talked about separating the phrase parks and roads. Would it be inappropriate for us to include the language Raymore Parks, Raymore Roads? Do we have to use the phrase proposition, question, issue? Can we just call it Raymore Streets, Raymore Parks, to make sure that people understand that the title, that's the subject that they're looking at? So I just wanted to throw that out for discussion.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Goffey or Mr. Fearborn on that topic. It sounds reasonable. Just jump in if I don't have this, Todd. When Todd and Sid Douglas and I were having an initial discussion on this, one of the suggested titles that I wanted to be able to give you all as an option was city, not proposition city parks, not question city parks, but was city parks, city roads. I actually added the word improvements in there, and that actually made Sid Douglas he squealed a little bit because he indicated that putting the word improvements in there might be kind of a sell to somebody who did not think that it was an improvement, and they could level that charge back at you. But I had used the term city parks and city roads, and he did not object to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That sounds very similar to what we started to discuss a couple of weeks ago at the meeting, and I voiced my opinion that I thought rather than just calling one of them parks or one of them streets, that actually saying Raymore so that we can really differentiate what's for the city, it's not for the county, just because I agree, lots of times people look at that language on the ballot and it's not really clear to them, or they don't, want to take the time to read every word. They read the first and the last, and so I think as clear but simple as we can get the titles of those, the better off it's going to be. So Raymore Parks and Raymore Streets sounds good to me.
Mr. Mayor, one of the concerns that I have, like I like the idea of just saying city park, because when I looked at it, or park system, when I looked at it, every single park except Memorial Park is being included in this. You're doing something out at Recreational Park. You're doing something at T.B. Hanna Park. You're doing something at Hawk Ridge. You're spreading it all out. And I think it's being spread too thin. And by listing all of these things, we ought to just say this is going to go for the parks. Between now and April, there may be some changes that we want to make, so that we want to maybe eliminate Hanna out of this and put more in on Hawk Ridge. Or maybe we don't want to do as much out on recreational, but we want to do more on Hawk Ridge. We've had Hawk Ridge for a long time and it's not been developed. It seems to me like we should take and spend more money on Hawk Ridge, but we don't have to decide that right now in order to get it on the ballot. We got to get something on the ballot, and then we can determine what it's inside that's going to be on the ballot afterwards. So I would move that we make it Raymore City Roads and Raymore City Park System. So that people, there's no doubt in anybody's mind that we're talking about the park and then for Raymore.
We've talked kind of full circle on this. We're still on item C, calling for the April 5th, 2016 no tax rate increase bond election, correct? Call the question.
You call the question, that limits debate, so we have to have a vote on that to delimit debate, to eliminate the discussion.
If the question is voted on at this time by the council, it is staff's understanding that there is no amendment being proposed or seconded, and the item would fall off the agenda with the vote of the council. So if it is, and Joe, you can correct me on this too, I believe the amendment to the title or any wording needs to take place at this time.
Remove the calling the question.
I'll remove my motion to call the question, sir.
So, Mr. Mayor, I move that we call question 1 Raymore Streets and question 2 Raymore Parks.
Okay, there's an amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment, Mr. Mayor. For clarification, just because I'm looking at our agenda, not the actual language itself. So question 1, because we have A as parks, B as streets. So which in the language
To
itself?
clarify, I move that we amend the bill to read, instead of question 1, to read Raymore Streets, and instead of question 2, to read Raymore Parks.
Okay.
Okay. There's an amendment for Part 1 to be Raymore Streets, Part 2 to be Raymore Parks. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Back to the main motion.
Now I'll call the question.
And just for staff's clarification, it's our understanding then that the question as called would have the amendment included in it and the original wording, as there have been no amendments made to the wording within.
You need a vote, Mr. Mayor, on the motion to close debate.
Okay. Shall we close debate on item 3128? All in favor? Opposed? Voting is closed. Debate is closed.
Now we have to actually vote on the item itself.
Second reading of Bill 3128 is amended. All in favor? Opposed? Not voting? Okay.
Okay.
Bill 3128 is approved as amended. Move on to Bill 3124. May I have the second reading of Bill 3124?
The second reading of Bill 3124 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving an amendment to the 2016 Administration and Economic Development operating budgets for personnel.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3124 for an amendment to the Economic Development and Administration personnel budget.
I'll second the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3124. Is there any discussion? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just something I'd like a little bit of discussion on. I mentioned this at the last meeting, but we kind of were on a roll, I think. It didn't take much time to talk about it. Doing a little research on this, I really feel like the place where this is put on the salary chart is a little bit high. When I was looking at several different sources, it's looked like the national average for a graphic design assistant position is about $44,000 a year, and entry level in Kansas City looked like more like $37,000 a year. Actually, 34 to 46 was about the median. So I just wondered if anyone else had any concern about where this was placed on the pay scale. It looked to me like it might fit better more like somewhere between a 6 and an 8 versus an 11. And since this is a new position, something the city has never hired for, I wonder if it would be in our best interest to start high, or maybe to think a little bit more about that.
I'd ask staff.
And Councilmember Delgado and I had the opportunity this weekend to have some pretty good exchanges relative to this one. She had initially asked. What we did was we took the job description for this particular position from a communications specialist job description within the MARC salary survey, annual salary survey. Very, very similar job description. No material changes between the two. It's simply a question of, quite honestly, one of the things is most folks around here recognize I'm not a big fan of having anybody named specialist. I gave that up once. I'm probably not going to give that one up again. We have a thank you. We have a purchasing payroll specialist, and that'll be the last one. So we were comparing to the communications specialist, again, for the job description, and actually took from the MARC survey for the Kansas City area the salary within the MARC survey for that particular position. I also once I receive one of these, call our outside consultant each time, Chip King, just to see if he thinks anything within the job description or the particular spot is out of whack, he still kind of does that for us on a pro bono basis. And then it's a little bit cheesy, but I also go to salary.com, and within that one I actually looked at graphic design person so that the title would match up. That particular site indicated that on the low end, persons are paid $20 to $25 an hour, with anyone below $20 an hour being in the bottom 10% of that group being paid. Then, interestingly enough, and this was totally coincidental, last week, Johnson County had sent a deal out to the group called RAPIO, which is the Public Information Officers Metropolitan Group here in Kansas City, and indicating that they are extending the amount of time for their communications specialist. They have an open position over there. Their communications specialist took a job as communications manager someplace, and the posting for that shows them to be just slightly below, I think it was about 20 cents below our range on either side, or our range for the starting point of this this particular position, which seemed to verify that we were probably placing it at least where other communities were placing it. As the council member indicates, it's a new position. We're advertising it up. We don't know what we're going to get as far as a response is concerned. I'd also indicated to the council member again that one of the reasons I put it at 11 instead of 10, where I was first tempted to drop it down to, is 11's kind of a line of demarcation where we require a degree or a certificate for the position, and that weighed into the factor of bumping it from the 10 to 11. And no time would I, as far as hiring and trying to be competitive with other communities, have thought quite that low, but it is a brand new position. We don't know what placing it in would do if we went with a lower spot. What would we learn? If nobody applied, we'd learn no one's going to come in and apply at that particular salary range.
Just the other position that you spoke about was a full-time position and not a part-time position, is that correct?
When we're talking about the communications specialist?
Yeah, the Johnson County one.
It's the one that's advertised right now is for a full-time position, but we always try to look at the position and not whether it's full-time or part-time as far as the pay is concerned. We're only going to pay them part-time, but
right. And
the amount that they make per hour should be commensurate with somebody who's full-time.
And just the other thing that I want to point out, based on what Mr. Fearborn said, he said certification required around 11. Our police officers are required to be certified, and they're at a 9. So there is a certification required for some of the steps below. Not a degree, but a certification. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't speak highly enough of this, and I think that it certainly warrants the 11 position. Being a police officer myself and starting on that low pay scale in a neighboring city, I know what that's like. However, this calls for a response to supply and demand. Unfortunately, cops come cheap. I was one of them, and I came cheap. Graphic design specialists do not. And while we list the position as an assistant, they're actually not an assistant to another graphics arts person. They're an assistant to executive staff. This is very important in the future of our city. I think this is a critical piece we've been missing for some time. I think this person's going to be doing a lot of work that I've tried to do very poorly on napkins and pieces of paper at restaurants to show an idea visually, as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I think that we want the best possible person that we can get. I think it's very important, A, that we have it, and B, we keep that pay salary in the 11 range. I think that, in fact, at some point in the near future, the demands on that spot are going to require a full-time job.
Other comments? There's been a motion? And a second. There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3124. There's no other discussion. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the second reading of Bill 3122 by title only, please.
The second reading of Bill 3122 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with SFS Architecture for architectural design services associated with the Activity Center to replace the Park House at Recreation Park project, City Project Number 16-229-301, in the amount of $251,870, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3122 for the architectural design services for an activity center to replace the Park House at Recreation Park.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3122. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Go ahead.
This is for the activity center, and we're going to vote on it in April. Aren't we kind of just jumping ahead? This is what is it, almost $250,000 we're going to spend to someone to come up with a plan. We haven't even found out whether the people are going to approve it or not. Am I missing something here?
Mr. Mayor? Thank you, sir. Yes, I don't know if you recall or not, Ms. Hubach, but in our budget discussions earlier this year, I was the one that requested that we put money towards what at that time was referred to as pre-construction cost. Everything but, to use my blue-collar layman's terms, everything but pounding the nails, building the facility itself, which would include Bill 3122 as we see it right now. This is simply the architectural design services. Should, and I hate to use this term because I don't want to be negative because it will pass, but should the GO bond fail, we would still have the necessary items, aka the blueprints and drawings from the architectural firm, to build this in the future if we could find our own money to do it. So it's not like we would be spending money and not using it if the GO bond were to fail. We would still have the elements that we would need to build it. We would just have that. No? You're looking at me funny. I'm missing something. What is it?
I'm sorry, sir. Actually, you may remember that Mr. Crass and I negotiated with SFS to phase this. It was one of the items that I brought up last time. They're getting so used to phasing our projects for us. We're actually only committing the council to $29,000 with this, not $250,000. If the bond issue passes, what this will do is it will give us the baselines, can it be done on this spot, and the pictures necessary to tell the voting public, here is what we're talking about. Here is what we would like you to, I'm sorry, here is what we're talking about. I can't say the other one.
I defer and apologize for my error, sir. Thank you.
Part two, you know where I was going. But then we would spend the rest when the bond issue passes, sir. Again, we're only committing to $29,000 this evening.
Other discussion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? One in opposition, 5 in approval. The issue passes. Move on to new business. We have a reading of Bill 3129 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3129 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from C-2/CCO, General Commercial/City Center Overlay District, to PR/CCO, Parks, Recreation, and Public Use/City Center Overlay District, lots 4, 5, 8, and 9 in the Raymore Municipal Complex, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
This requires a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing by asking for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to go through this very, very slowly because this will be my first of these. City Hall and all other city-owned properties are currently zoned PR, Parks, Recreation, and Public Use. The city recently purchased lots 4, 5, 8, and 9 in the Raymore Municipal Complex. Prior to development, the 4 lots need to be rezoned. Since the lots are located within the municipal complex subdivision, the zoning designation being requested is PR CCO, Parks, Recreation, and Public Use City Center Overlay District. The overlay district for the city center designation is mandatory for all property in the municipal complex and establishes certain use and design standards for our new buildings that are built here. This particular item, the city staff conducted a good neighbor meeting on November 18th, 2015. 7 neighbors from around the area did attend the meeting. Neighbors asked about such items as screening, parking, future plans for the use of lots 4 and 5 over on the west side. All in all, I would characterize that meeting as going very well. The staff then forwarded this to the Planning and Zoning Commission on December 1st, 2015, with the recommendation for case 15019 of approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission at that December 1st meeting did vote 5-0 to accept the staff proposed findings of fact and forward case 15019 to the City Council for your approval. Because this is a public hearing, I would enter into the record the items of record, which would include Exhibit 1, mailed notices to adjoining property owners, Exhibit 2, notice of publication, Exhibit 3, Unified Development Code, Exhibit 4, the application, Exhibit 5, the growth management plan, Exhibit 6, the staff reports, and I would also further enter into the record the staff proposed findings of fact that were approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission to be forwarded to the City Council, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes of December 1st, 2015, with staff's recommendation to the City Council for approval. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you. Questions of staff? I'll open the floor for public comment. If somebody'd like to make a comment, please state your name and address for the record. Keep your comments to under 5 minutes. Seeing nobody come forward, I'll close the public hearing. And I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3129.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3129 regarding the rezoning of municipal complex lots 4, 5, 8, and 9.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3129. Is there any discussion? All in
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I only do this because the attorney that normally attends our planning and zoning sessions is here. So I would say, I hope I'm not going to get into trouble if I say, could we change the zoning to C3PO? Sorry, I had to do it just to break the monotony.
Jonathan's watching.
Another Star Wars reference?
Yes. Sorry, I had to.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the first reading of Bill 3131 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3131 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Town and Country Disposal of Western Missouri for the public facilities trash and recycling services, City Project Number 16-003, in the amount of $4,086.40.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Mr. Grass.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Staff is requesting award of the contract for public facilities, trash and recycling. This includes trash pickup and recycling for the City Hall, parks, and Public Works. It also includes roll-off dumpsters service, and we are recommending award to Town and Country Disposal.
Questions of staff? Go ahead. Jeffrey?
Sir, staff, their service has been a little bit erratic lately, and even missing some things. Did they get that squared away?
Yes, sir. We have every intention, and they are well aware that, as I believe all of you know, Town and Country was purchased by a larger company, Waste Corporation of America, approximately 2 months ago. And we have been hearing from resident services that there have been some inconsistencies, different pickup times. They've been getting to everything, but there have been some issues that I have found it necessary to call them in to have discussion on. This particular contract is strictly for picking up trash at our buildings, at Public Works and here, and we've seen no degradation in service within that contract, and staff would recommend it be given to them.
Mr. Fairborn, in light of the purchase of Town and Country, were the submissions for these bids submitted prior or subsequent to the sale?
Following the sale. And the corporation still doing business with us is Town and Country.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3131 for Public Facilities Trash and Recycling Services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of Bill 3131. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. You have the first reading of Bill 3132 by title only, please.
The first reading of Bill 3132 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into agreement with Cone, Inc. for the City Hall Elevator Preventative Maintenance Services, City Project Number 16-004, in the amount of $1,116.
Staff report, please.
Yes, sir, I'd call on Mr. Krass.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This contract involves not only preventive maintenance of the City Hall elevator, but annual safety inspection services for that. Cone Incorporated is presently doing the work for us and is doing it satisfactorily, and we do recommend award of the contract to them.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3132 for the City Hall Elevator Preventative Maintenance Services.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3132. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. You have the first reading of Bill 3130 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3130 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Kansas City Audio Visual for the purchase and installation of a council chamber sound system in the amount of $37,767, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Mr. Mayberry.
Good evening. Last year, city staff was asked to review the acoustics in the city council chambers to determine if improvements could be made to the sound quality and ability to hear in the room. Two solutions were proposed. First, replacement of the existing acoustic panels, which is being completed. The second proposed solution involved existing the low-grade ceiling speakers mounted and with high-quality mounted speakers for optimal sound. Also calls for replacing existing audio equipment in the media room with new equipment that will better pick up sounds from the microphones. In addition to the proposed audio system, an in-floor microphone system was requested to replace the current wireless microphone system for city council work sessions. Accordingly, staff issued request for proposal 16-198-202. One bid was received. Staff has reviewed purchasing policy requirements for single bids and recommends the award of the contract to Kansas City Audiovisual in the amount of $37,767.
Questions of staff? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3130 for the award of contract for the council chamber sound system.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the first reading of 3130. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. That completes new business. Open the floor for public comments. Please identify yourself for the record and keep your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. We'll close the public comments and move on to mayor council communication. Let's see. This evening we'll begin with Councilmember Holman.
Thank you, sir. I will comment tonight. As this is our last meeting of 2015, I want to give out some thank yous. First of all, I want to say thank you to the press. They're here at almost every one of our meetings. They're at the back table. As a member of the Fourth Estate, you are play a very important role in government and keeping our citizens informed about things that are going on in the city. So I say thank you and continue the work that you're doing. I want to say thank you to Mr. Willerth and Mr. Zur. It's been a long time since we've seen both of you in the room. I would say to both of you, starting with Mr. Willerth and to Mr. Zur, Namaste Sensei, with the theory, if you don't follow me, is peace teacher. That's my intended meaning, is I've learned more than I ever thought possible from definitely Mr. Willerth and the continuing education from Mr. Zur on planning and zoning. Thank you very much. I want to thank Public Works and Mr. Crass. Your staff has done an outstanding job this year. We have put additional projects and burdens on them. Got their first real test. As you already stated, you have some rookies, if you will, out on the crew tonight learning as they go. I don't think that we think about it as citizens a lot of times, but we so rely on your department and taking care of the things that we take for granted. Thank you, sir. Keep up that work. It is being noticed. And I would leave my last thanks to Mr. Feuerborn and staff. It's been an outstanding year in 2015. I think you've done great work. I think that the citizens are recognizing it. I know the city council recognizes it. I know that I recognize it. Please continue your vision and good works and pass on my appreciation to all of our employees here at the city. The last thing that I will leave everyone with is I believe personally that 2016 will be the year of renaissance in Raymore. If you've been following anything that we've been doing and listening to all the jabber about the GeoBond project, it will transform the city. I've said this day is coming for many years with the development of the new interchange off of 49, but now even taking another direction. Take a look in 365 days and see if I am not correct. That's all.
Councilmember Hubach.
Yes, I'm glad to see that the council is going to have something done about the hearing there, because it has been a problem for me. I thought it would all be taken care of when I got my cochlear implant, but then the city's equipment began to fail, so now I'm back to where I'm wanting my personal equipment's working just fine. Now, if I can get the city's to work as well, I'm doing okay.
Councilmember Abdel Gawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have much tonight. Just want to hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and wish everyone a Happy New Year.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to welcome Patrick Clark and Tom McVeigh to the TIF Commission and thank them for volunteering. Mr. Clark is here tonight with us, and I believe do we have a full TIF Commission now?
We do, sir.
Oh, very good. I wanted to also thank Mr. Crass and his group. He was kind of selling us short when he said the winter event they started yesterday. I think you started probably a year ago planning for this year. So, like Mr. Holman said, that doesn't go unnoticed. We do appreciate what you do, and I'm old enough to remember when I was raised in a small town, and when we had an event like this, they used to say, well, if God put it here, he'll take it away. So it's nice that the city is getting involved with getting the snow removed. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens.
No comments tonight.
Councilmember Moorhead.
I want to thank Mr. Clark and Mr. McVeigh as well for your volunteering to be a part of our team and our family here. And I know those TIF discussions will be super exciting, but thank you for participating. I wanted to take a moment and talk a little bit substantively on an issue that we had on the agenda earlier, but this is slightly outside of the nature of the discussion, and that's regarding the graphic design assistant position. I respected all the approaches that were presented regarding that discussion. The proposed salary chart is kind of nebulous to me in the sense that, it's slightly arbitrary, but at the same time you have to have some structure just to try to get a starting point on things. The problem that I was really trying to reconcile with that was, being a graphic design person is so unique that there's almost a point where I almost wanted to suggest or at least pose the question, should that be on the chart itself? For example, there's no attorneys on the chart. We as attorneys bid uniquely, architects bid uniquely. And I know that this is a staff position, and so there has to be some structure there, but I also respect, so I agree with Councilmember Abdelgawad's concern. I also want to respect Councilmember Holman's recognition that this is a highly technical position that requires a uniqueness that you don't just get a degree. I mean, there's a talent factor to it as well, and that's hard to quantify into a chart itself. So, I guess I would just kind of encourage that maybe we take from the discussion that this needs to be explored later in detail to see exactly. I know staff has, put a lot of time into this, but I almost wonder whether that should be uniquely bid or constructed differently, because no different than if the city is required to hire, say, outside legal counsel. I go back to the law because kids coming out of law school think they need $100 an hour, but at the same time, there is some uniqueness to that warrants that. And so in this particular instance, I kind of had to stay quiet because I'm kind of taking a third approach to it, because I think all the things that were said are equally valuable. And so I think for a later discussion, that might be worthy of review, because, not just graphic design, but there's some other technical things that we utilize in the city that, I guess don't really fall into a 9, 10, 11 kind of scale. So it's a tough answer. I'm not sure, and I don't have it. So anyway, I just wanted to at least vocalize that as kind of a third portion of that discussion. With that, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
All righty. And I'll echo everybody else in saying Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we have reason to go in executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we enter into executive session to discuss litigation matters as authorized by Section 610.021 subsection 1, in addition to enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters as authorized by 610.021 subsection 3.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Yes.
Councilmember Barber.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke absent. Councilmember Holman.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubach.
Yes.
Councilmember Kellogg absent. Councilmember Moorhead.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
We'll be going into the executive session. We'll reconvene only to adjourn the main meeting.